Good morning, venerables and friends. Is this supposed to be spring? Today or tomorrow? It's very beautiful anyway. I'm basing my talk this morning on the Kayagata Sati Sutta, which is from the Pali Canon, of course, and translates as mindfulness immersed in the body. I was, interested in this particular sutta because it relates very well to my own practice lately, and a kind of renewed interest and understanding I have for meditation with the body. Besides looking at this sutta in depth, or at least parts of it, I also want to make connections to sort of branch out into contemporary neuroscience and what it teaches us about the brain, the body, our emotions. Also, a little bit with Tibetan yoga and somatic practices, as taught by Reggie Ray, who's a Vajrayana teacher, and also with Mahayana ideas of emptiness and compassion. But to begin with this sutta, it tells of an occasion when the Buddha's disciples returned from their alms rounds, their alms collections, and gathered together at their meeting place. And someone said, "Isn't it amazing, friends? Isn't it astounding? The extent to which mindfulness immersed in the body, when developed and pursued, is said by the Blessed One who knows, who sees, the worthy one, rightly self-awakened, to be of great fruit and great benefit." And the narrator says that the discussion came to no conclusion. Then the Buddha came into the hall and asked what the monks had been talking about. So one of them repeated the exclamation about how amazing and astounding it is, the extent to which mindfulness immersed in the body, when developed and pursued, is said by the Blessed One to be of great fruit and benefit. The monks were quite enthused, it seems, by this teaching, to be using the words amazing and astounding. It sounds as if they felt this was quite a surprising teaching. Perhaps they felt it was amazing that mindfulness immersed in the body could have as great a benefit as the Buddha claimed for it. So then the Buddha launches into an explanation of how mindfulness immersed in the body is developed and pursued to be of great fruit and benefit. He describes how a practitioner might go to a secluded place, sits down, folding his legs crosswise, holding his body erect, and setting mindfulness to the fore. Notice how the correct posture comes first. Our posture when we meditate reflects and communicates our sense of seriousness, dignity, and dedication, not to others, but to ourselves. By composing our body in a particular way, the body and mind are agreeing to come together for this sacred and wholesome practice. The Buddha continues, always mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Whether the meditator's breath is long or short, the Buddha said, he discerns that it is long or short. He notices the quality of the breath. Next, the Buddha says that the meditator trains himself to breathe in sensitive to the entire body and breathe out sensitive to the entire body. So the practice is getting a bit more involved. How often when we meditate do we really practice breathing in and out sensitive to the entire body? Do we really know what this means? The Buddha's instruction continues, breathe in calming bodily fabrication and breathe out calming bodily fabrication. What is this bodily fabrication? And what does it mean to calm it? When we fabricate something, it means we make it or make it up. And in this case, the Buddha says the approach to the bodily fabrication is to calm it. It seems to me the Buddha's instruction has to do with learning to discriminate true from false, or the fabricated, the made up, from the natural or authentic qualities of the body-mind complex. There's a deep level of observation, of intimacy hinted at here, of getting to know the workings of the body, the sensations, the emotions, buried within our muscles and tendons and organs. The Buddha's next words are, "And as he remains thus heedful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned, and with their abandoning, his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and centered." This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. Here the Buddha is assuring us that as this mindfulness develops, our concerns with the relative pettiness of the household life fade away. Our priorities shift. We discover what is truly important and what is mere fabrication. The Buddha goes on to describe practices for developing mindfulness immersed in the body, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, and indeed when engaging in all the activities of daily life, eating, drinking, chewing, savoring, urinating, defecating, falling asleep, waking up. Furthermore, the Buddha continues, the monk reflects on this very body from the soles of the feet on up, from the crown of the head on down, surrounded by skin and full of various kinds of unclean things. And he refers to things like hairs, nails, teeth, bone marrow, all the organs, intestines, and all the various fluids that the organs and the body create and emit. I think this kind of meditation on the body as an unclean thing was intended for monastics of the Buddha's time as a way of loosening the monk's attachment to the physical body and the sensual life. I'm not sure it's so helpful to us Western practitioners, but certainly we can meditate on the internal organs and areas of the body, the muscle groups, the lower belly, the heart center, the solar plexus, the individual toes, all around the shoulder blades, the pelvis, and so on. There's no need to think of the body as something disgusting. What we really want to do is get in touch with the body and become intimate with its stored memories and emotions so that we can integrate the body's knowledge into our consciousness. A very useful meditation practice is given next by the Buddha in the sutta, which consists of the monk, and I quote, contemplating this very body in terms of properties, the earth property, the liquid property, the fire property, and the wind property. In meditation, we can actually feel the earth property in the solidity of our body, the hardness of our bones against the floor and the bones of our sitting bones against the cushion. Also the liquid flowing nature of the blood and other fluids, tears bathing our eyes, saliva in our mouths, and so forth. We can feel the wind property in our breathing, also in our body's subtle outer motion through space as we sit. And the fire property in the heat generated by our metabolism, the variations in temperature ranging from the heat of our central core to the relative coolness of the extremities. This is a wonderful practice for becoming more intimately acquainted with aspects of the body. That's all I'm going to quote from the Kayagata Sati Sutta, but I want to remind you of a story which I find is related, which I think is from the Jataka tales, not from the Pali Canon, in which a story is told of the Buddha seated in meditation, coming close to his full enlightenment. And Mara, the tempter, appears to the Bodhisattva, the soon-to-be Buddha, and challenges him for the seat of enlightenment. He claims the Bodhi seat for himself. And Mara is accompanied by his armies of minions who all exclaim as his witness and defend his claim. So Mara asks the Buddha, who will give witness for him? Who will defend your claim to the Bodhi seat? At that point, the Buddha makes a very simple gesture of touching the earth with his right hand. And the earth did speak for and give her witness to the Buddha and defended his right to the seat of enlightenment. This has come to be called the Earth Witness Mudra. And it's a beautiful image and symbol of how the Buddha and the Dharma are part and parcel of our earthly reality. He didn't turn to heavenly beings as witnesses. Buddha Dharma is not transcendent. We connect with our awakened nature, with the truth of the cosmos, with the earth itself and other beings, through our body. This is a very important, very significant lesson. As Karen Armstrong wrote in her biography of the Buddha, the man or woman who seeks enlightenment is in tune with the fundamental structure of the universe. There's another account of the Buddha's enlightenment in the Majjhima Nikaya, in which the Buddha recounts how, following the purification of his concentrated mind in the jhanas, he says, I inclined my mind to the knowledge of recollection of past lives. Countless past lives were revealed to him, with their experiences of pleasure and pain, his name, his appearance, the length of time he lived, and so forth. This was the first true knowledge attained by me in the first watch of the night. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished and light arose, as happens to one who is diligent, ardent, and self-controlled. But I allowed no such pleasant feeling as arose in me to gain power over my mind. So the Buddha calls this experience the first true knowledge attained by me. What is true knowledge but that which is experiential, first-hand, not received from someone else? I think he's talking about bodily knowledge. He also says darkness was banished and light arose. In this passage, it seems to me, the Buddha is describing his experience of past lives which have been enfolded in the darkness of his body, hidden from consciousness, until his meditation, immersed in the body, was able to bring what was hidden in the darkness into the light of consciousness. We may also call this liberation of karma, or liberation from karma. Why? Because when the darkness of past experience, which has been hidden from consciousness, because it's too painful to admit or accept, is then integrated with consciousness, it loses its power to drive us blindly through the energy of habit and conditioning, of desire and aversion. In each of the Buddha's accounts of his enlightenment experiences, he concludes by saying, "But I allowed no such pleasant feeling as arose in me to gain power over my mind." He's pointing out that yes, there were pleasant feelings involved in these experiences, but he's able to experience them without giving them the power to distract him or to stimulate grasping in him. I would like to visit the teachings of Mahayana briefly, which also has much to say that is relevant to our sutta. The Lankavatara Sutra describes the 8 tiers of consciousness in the individual, culminating in the Tathagata Garva, which means womb of the Buddhas, or the storehouse consciousness, called the Alaya Vijnana in Sanskrit, which is the base of the individual's deepest awareness and her very tie to the cosmos. Meditation with the body leads us to realize our connection to the entire cosmos by reconnecting with our somatic wisdom. By bringing to light of consciousness the darkness of our karmic past, we are contacting the storehouse consciousness, or Alaya Vijnana. And just as the Buddha had several significant dreams on the threshold of his enlightenment, so may we also expect dreams to arise in us as we delve deeper into this realm of body consciousness, or body awareness. The name storehouse consciousness means that this level of consciousness is where the seeds of karma are stored. Where are we to seek access to this deep level of consciousness except through the body? Carl Jung, one of the early Western psychologists, believed there was a somatic unconscious. And contemporary neuroscience also tells us that our conscious experience can and does hide much of our painful past, which, because it's unconscious, emerges in the form of illness, neurosis, depression, and addiction. Bringing past trauma to consciousness, which we can do through meditation with the body, can help us liberate these difficult emotions and memories by integrating them with our conscious mind. The wonderful writer about neuroscience and, excuse me, his name is Antonio Damasio, has this to say: sometimes we use our minds not to discover facts, but to hide them. One of the things the screen of our mind hides most effectively is the body, our own body, by which I mean the ends of it, its interiors. Like a veil thrown over the skin to secure its modesty, the screen partially removes from the mind the inner states of the body, those that constitute the flow of life as it wanders in the journey of each day. This is from his book entitled Self Comes to Mind, Constructing the Conscious Brain. So this is how we become detached from our body. It becomes almost numb to us in many areas. For example, try right now to really feel your big toe. How real is it to you? Perhaps you can imagine where it is, its outlines, but can you really feel it from the inside? Feel the toenail and even under the nail. In another book called The Feeling of What Happens, Body and Emotion in the Making of Consciousness, Damasio writes, primordial feelings provide a direct experience of one's own living body, wordless, unadorned, and connected to nothing but sheer existence. These primordial feelings reflect the current state of the body along varied dimensions, along the scale that ranges from pleasure to pain, and they originate at the level of the brain stem rather than the cerebral cortex. All feelings of emotion are complex musical variations on primordial feelings. In this statement, Damasio is getting at the experiences of deep bodily meditation in which various parts of the body awaken from the dark, emerge from hiding, to reveal stored tension, pain, stress, which we then have a chance of relaxing, of letting go of. And when we relax those pains and tensions, we sometimes get an inkling of the experience, an emotion that was enfolded with that bodily tension. The Vajrayana teacher, Reggie Ray, gave a powerful Dharma talk, which I listened to just yesterday, which he called Freeing the Prisoner. He begins by referring to the Bodhisattva vow that we take which is that we defer or recognize our inability to be fully liberated until all other beings are liberated from suffering and samsara. And he extends the premise of that vow to meditating with the body, because by following this practice, meditation immersed in the body, mindfulness immersed in the body, we find that within us there are countless suffering beings, locked in dark dungeons and torture chambers, shrieking to be heard and freed. He says, there is one of these tortured beings for every second of our life which has contracted through the suffering, the dukkha, of our existence. These past and present beings have been locked down in the dark to keep us, adult, competent, self-satisfied egos, from reliving that existential pain. These are the beings we are called to liberate, to see them by becoming them, and to give them voice by admitting the pain. And when we liberate one of these suffering beings, one of these prisoners, we liberate part of every other being. So we see that meditating with the body, or mindfulness immersed in the body, is a very, very compassionate practice. Furthermore, until these prisoners are freed, they are actually in control of us, and the greater part of our awareness is involved in keeping them down, of keeping their pain away from our consciousness. Here's one more quote from the perspective of modern neuroscience relevant to this idea. It's from the book called Healing the Traumatized Self, Consciousness, Neuroscience, and Treatment by Paul Frewin and Ruth Lanius. Agency is the technical term for being in charge of your life. Knowing where you stand, knowing that you have a say in what happens to you, knowing that you have some ability to shape your circumstances. Agency starts with being aware of our subtle sensory body-based feelings. The greater our awareness, the greater our potential control of our lives. Knowing what we feel is the first step to knowing why we feel that way. If we are aware of the constant changes in our inner and outer environment, we can mobilize to change them, to manage them. But we can't do this unless our watchtower, the medial prefrontal cortex, MPFC, learns to observe what is going on inside us. This is why mindfulness practice, which strengthens the medial prefrontal cortex, is a cornerstone of recovery from trauma. So the more fully we are embodied, the more mindful we become of our body, the more open and clear is our awareness. The more familiar we become with our body's energies, by patient, very close attention and using various practices, the more we are able to descend to the dark chambers where our prisoners are chained, develop the courage to take them by the hand and lead them to the light. We're approaching the Christian holiday of Easter, and I believe today is Palm Sunday, and this coming week is called Holy Week, during which the Passion of Christ will be commemorated. And I was reminded of a passage from Christ's life which tells that following his crucifixion, he descended into hell and freed the souls who had been suffering there, awaiting waiting for his coming. And I thought, wow, is this not another version of the same story? Of meditation with the body and the liberation that it brings. By going deeply into the body, we face the death of the ego in order to befriend the prisoners, the suffering souls who are waiting for the Savior, the embodied, compassionate awareness that our practice develops in us. May all beings be free from hostility. May all beings be free from affliction. May all beings be free from distress. May all beings live with ease. Thank you.